Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello students, how are you doing? I hope you are doing well. Here in this video, I'm going to explain to you about a structure for structurizing your interview report. But before coming to my first point in this presentation, I think I need to let you know that a structure that I have in this presentation, or the points that I'm going to show you soon enough, could be used for both oral and written report, especially for report interview. So I hope everyone it can help you. It can help you to prepare your report or to manage your report better. Well, this is the first point that we need to know about the structure. So actually, the points, I have some points today in this video. The first is about brief introduction. So before starting your presentation for the report, I think you need to have a preparation before, a preparation or a guideline for you to talk or to write your report interview. And number one point is brief introduction. So in reporting your interview, you should not have actually like a long introduction about your interview itself. So you just need to provide a brief introduction to open your report or to open your presentation. And this brief introduction actually contains your interview, the real interview that you had done before, and but or your assignment interview that I had already assigned you last week. Last week we have one assignment to do, and that's about interviewing an English teachers or English students, and the participant actually free. Free of your choice, so you can choose anyone, and the content of your interview should be about how does people, your participants learn English, or if the participants are teachers, of course, that your question will lead uh, to how could those teachers teach English to their students. The strategies, the methods, or the experiences of those people are also okay. So the contents of your assignment. I'm sorry, this is actually not about brief introduction point, but I just want to remind you about our assignment before, that you are free to create your own questions for your interview. And if you had already done that assignment, your first interview to those participants of your choice, then you need to manage what you need to do to the next assignment that we have. I had already posted the next assignment on Google Classroom. That's about presenting. Okay, presenting your interview. So you've got to report what you have already found in your previous interview, and how to manage that. As I taught you before, I mentioned already that number one point that you have to have in your presentation structure is introduction. So you've got to have a brief introduction. So do not let your listeners or your writers, if it is in a written report, do not let them blank. They do not know what you're going to talk about and what that's about. So it would be better if you introduce a little bit about what you're going to report. That's of course actually about your interview. And this is one of the examples that I have, but I think I just need to, not one of the examples, but this is only one example that I have. I'm sorry. And this example is actually not mine, so I never wrote this kind of interview report, but I got this somewhere. So this is an interview report. In the form of written report, and it belongs to someone. It is not mentioned on the article, but I think this example is quite good for you and also for me to better describe the structures that I'm going to explain to you. And here, let me read for you. This is the introduction, the brief introduction. You may see from this on the right side. On the right side, this is the writing. This is an excerpt of an interview project that I completed for one of my professional writing classes, and I had to interview a professional writer in the workplace and analyze the interview. This is one of the pieces I submitted that resulted in my winning the course scholarship of $5,000 this spring. So you may see this is very clear introduction, right? This is very clear introduction, and it takes only one, two, three, only three sentences. So this writer introduce the interview about starting from the very first sentence. So we don't any unconcise words. So this writer just tried directly to inform the readers, because this is an example of a written report. So if it is, I think this is good for you to know, even though that the assignment that I gave you last week is not about a written report, but oral report, I mean the presentation report, but you still can use this kind of structure, I think, because it really helps. And here you may see the first sentence. If we try to analyze the first sentence, this is an excerpt of an interview project that I completed for one of my professional writing class. So this is very clear that this report is written because of the writer has a project and he or she needs to complete one of the professional writing classes. So the interview is for writing class. So if we go back to our assignment in our class that I gave you last week, it is about not it is about, but you may paraphrase this actually. So you may say that this is an excerpt of interview project that I completed for one of my speaking class, speaking class, right? So because our class is in academic speaking, so you may change the professional writing classes into speaking writing class. So, but it should not be that way actually. So you are free to narrate or describe yourself for the interview thing that you want to introduce to your listeners later on. So this is only one of the example. And you may see not we could see actually on the second sentence over here. I had to interview a professional. So it after you mention in the very first sentence what interview about and what to complete with that interview. If it is one of the requirements of the your I mean one of the requirements of the class, you mentioned that in very first place, and after that you let the listeners know about the interview itself, like this. I had to interview a professional writer, and you, what about you? I had already gave you an assignment that you have to interview an English teacher or an English learners or a student in English department. So that's our case. That's our case for the second example. I mean the second sentence over here. So you may try to prepare your presentations and also your words for that, for your brief introduction. And let us see the last sentence that the writer has. This is one of the pieces that I submitted that resulted in my winning the course scholarship of 5,000 this springs. And here you're going to be free on this last sentence, whether you want to have this kind of sentence or not, because I will not award you with the money after your accomplishment and our assignment. If you finish the assignments, I'm sorry, I don't have the work for you, but I'll just give you a score after that. But what about if you create something else different? That's also okay. So once again, for your presentation assignment, you are free to talk about you are free to use your own words to describe your interview. for your introductions. And I think that's all for point number one. And I think that's quite clear. If you think that my explanation is not clear for you and you are still confused about that, you may ask me in our WhatsApp groups, or you may also give a comment on Google Classroom, or you can also actually comment here, okay? On the column, on the comment column behind, and not behind, below, below, below this video. Okay, let's go to the second point of the structure. The second point is the nature of your report. Nature of your report, because the choice of word here is nature. I think you are free. You have a freedom to talk about anything, anything of stuffs related to your report. I mean your interview findings, and not not yet findings actually. I'm sorry. The second point here, nature of your report, contains about you may read the sub points over here. So the first point is about aim of the interview. So after you had already uh, spoken about your brief introduction, that's our first point, right, in the structure. So in the second point, after that, it would be better if you let the readers know, or you let the listeners know about the aim of the interview, the aim of the interview, or why did you do the interview. So the aim is just like a purpose or goals for your interview. And the second sub point that you may have in the nature of your report is about who the participants are. So do not let the listener have a question. I mean, I have a question about who the participants are. Okay, so it would be better you let them know who the participants are in details, but do not give the details which are out of the context. uh what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that you do not need to let the listeners know the details which are not uh in a relation, which are not in a relation to the focus of the interview. So you may talk about the participants in details, their names, and who they are from, where they are from, where are they from, I mean, I'm sorry, where are they from, and other details, as long as those details is in your focus. Okay, as long as the details are in your focus, sorry. And the third subtopic of the third sub point of here is techniques of conducting the interview. I don't know whether you had already prepared before about a technique for your interview or not, but it is actually I mean, it obviously has a technique behind for your interview. The technique, if you do not know the name, it would be better if you find a name for that, so you get a knowledge of that interview. Because in every interview, if you sit for proposal, or if you write for a research proposal, if you have a part for the interview, you have to know what kind of interview you are using, and then what the name of that interview, and how is the procedure for having that kind of technique. And I think it would be better in this assignment, in the speaking assignment, you know the name of that technique too. It would be nice if you can mention that, and you realize the procedures, whether the procedure follows the name of the interview or not. Okay, the last sub point that I have for nature of your report is the aim of the report itself. Uh, Do not be confused, okay? Because I got two words for aim. So the first sub point over here, you may see there's the first, the aim of the interview, and the last is the report aims to inform. Actually, the report aims and the aim of the interview, they are different. Okay, they are different. The difference is, I think the difference is clear. The first aim is for the interview. Why did you do the interview? But for the report, it's gonna be different aim. The report aims to inform who, okay, what points or what findings and what are the aims of telling people the results of your interview. So that's gonna be the report aims to inform. I hope you are clear for the difference. And if you think that you are not clear for the differences, you may ask me later on, okay? Ah, diam sebentar. Ibu sebentar lagi selesai. Now, this is a example for nature of report. It takes more than three sentences. I mean, more than three sentences from the first. If we compare to the first example of introduction, because introduction is very short, right? Brief introduction. But nature of report, it takes longer actually for your presentation, or it takes longer in your writing if you are doing a writing report. Let me read for you the example. In order to gain insight into the different opportunities available for students pursuing a career in writing, the students of English 306 were instructed to interview an individual within the field of professional writing. And there were no stipulation about the medium used for the interview or the types of questions that needed to be asked. Students were permitted to select their own respondent in hopes that they would be able to interview someone involved in a career path that the students found interesting. And the report is directed toward fellow classmates, so you may see it here. The report is directed toward fellow classmates as well as future students in English 306. The report aims to inform students about the medium of screenplay writing. Additionally, the report will explore the connections between screenplay writing and professional writing within the framework of class lectures and concepts that have been discussed throughout the semester. Okay, so on the left on the left screen, you may see and refer back to the points I mentioned before, that it contains aim of the interview, and the second, who the participants are, techniques of conducting the interview, and the last is report aims to inform. And if we try to analyze the sentence, does it have aim of the interview? Let us see. In order to gain insight into different opportunities available for students pursuing a career in writing, the students of English 306 were instructed to interview. Yes, it has, right? So the aim of the interview is to gain insight into the different opportunities available for students. So that's the aim of the interview. And who the participants are. Uh, Here is the answer, right? The students of English 306 were instructed to interview an individual within the field of professional writing. So that's the participants. And the technique of the interview, techniques of conducting the interview. Do you see, are you, do you, I mean, do you see the technique and the example? Here is the techniques or the procedures, right? There were no stipulations about the medium used for the interview or the types of questions that needed to be asked. So even the writer didn't mention exactly the name of the technique used for the interview, but here the writer, you may see that the writer had already explained the procedures of having that interview. There were no stipulations by the medium used for the interview or the type of the question that needed to be asked. So here it is. And students were permitted to select their own respondents in hope. So the respondents to be taken is free of choice. I mean, it depends on the writers, the students itself. And I think this is also similar with your assignment, right? You are free. You are free to choose whoever is suitable for your interview. And what about the techniques? Okay, we did the techniques. And the last is the report aims to inform. I think that's also mentioned here. The report is directed toward fellow classmates as well as future students in English 3 of 6, and the report aims to inform students about the medium of screenplay writing. So that's the report aims. The report aims to inform students about the medium of screenplay writing. So students, my students, I hope you can also do at least like the writers have. I mean the point in this writing to your presentation assignment. To your presentation assignment, because I think this is very clear, and it helps a listener understand your presentation. It helps readers understand your writing too, if it is in writing report. Okay, now let us go to the third point for the structure. So in this report structure, we have participants background. And this third point is not similar to who the participants are in the nature of your report on the second subpoint, who the participants are. But this third point is been more on the information about the participants, like their demographic background. And this section these sections or this point of your presentation or even in your writing report, it will inform it will inform the listeners or the readers about the related informations of your topic interview. What are the examples? Let us see the examples over here. So here is the example. You may see on the right side of your screen respondents background here. Okay, the PDF one. Respondents background. I'll read you. I'll read it for you. The respondent, I conducted an interview with a Purdue graduate student named Travis Dorsch. Mr. Dorsch is in the midst of completing a degree in sports psychology. So this is information about the participants or the respondents. Whether the terminology or the word used for participants is different in PDF. So in PDF, the word is respondent, and what I have in my presentation slide is participants. They are actually uh, have no difference. So whether you want to use respondents or participants, they are all similar. And now let us read again about the information that the writer has for telling the background of the participants or the respondents. So the first sentence over here, it's really about, I'm sorry, it's really about the background of the participants, right? Respondents, here the writer says, I conducted an interview with a Purdue graduate student named Travis. So the background mentioned over here is the name of that participants. So in your interview, I mean, in your presentation, your report presentation, if you think that, not if you think, but if you are sure that your respondents or your participants of your interview don't mind about their name mentioned in your presentation or in your video. I think you may use that. Okay, you may write or mention the name of that people or that participants. But if you are sure that they do not want their name mentioned, that's also okay. Okay, so there is nothing like a must saying people's name, okay, in your report, because actually in some academic report, it keeps it is kept confidential. So secret, just like it's secret, confidential. The information is confidential. Okay, let us go to the next sentence. What kind of background information this writer mentioned? Mr. Dodge is in the midst of completing a degree in sports psychology. So this is another information, right? So the participants of this writer is in a degree, it is in completing a degree in sports psychology. And you in your presentation also could mention the level of the education that they are having. If you think that the level of their education is important for you, I mean for your interview, then you may mention that. And what else? The example of backgrounds you may inform to the listeners or readers. Here on the next sentence. Recently, he wrote and produced a screenplay for a film called Thick as Thieves, which was screened locally in West Lafayette. Okay, this is another information. So, the the participants produce a screenplay, right? The participants of this writer produce a screenplay for a film and screened locally in West Lafayette. So this is the information of the participants. Uh, I mean their work, his work. And the next information, let us see the next information. His partners are Bam Todd and Leah Tate, two other Purdue University students, and Mr. Todd and Mr. Tate had collectively formed a production company called Reagan Pictures and released their first film in 2006. And the film was titled Last Change, and it centered around a group of rogue assassins. And Mr. Dodge had Mr. Mr. not Mrs. I'm sorry, Mr. Dodge happened to be in audience for one of the screening of Last Change. Afterwards, he met with Mr. Tate and Mr. Todd and expressed his interest in being a part of their production company. Mr. Dorsch, oh, this name is so difficult to pronounce, was given a brave outline of ideas that were being explored for a sequel to Last Change. Using those notes, he created the screenplay for their newest film, Thick as Thieves. In October, Thick as Thieves was screened at Fowler Hall on Purdue University's campus. Currently, Mr. Dorch is at work creating the screenplay for the third and final installment in what will be called the Last Change trilogy. As of now, he has not decided whether he wants to produce screenwriting as a full-time career, but he indicated that it is a possibility. So I think this is a nice portion of information about participants' background. Uh, you may also think for your assignment, what are the background of your participants or respondents? What the details are needed to inform listeners in your presentation about. So you've got to think about that. Okay. And here, this is the fourth point. This is the fourth point for a structure of your presentation report or your writing report. Here is why they or the participants were chosen. And this part is actually for telling about uh, why you did choose the participants. Okay, why you did choose the participants. You may actually think about the answer for that by referring to the previous points, like nature of report and then participants background and how the participants background fit your interview goals, for example. So you may mention that reason You can have a short explanation of why you did choose the participants. And here's the example. So this point actually doesn't take a long speaking or a long writing, because it only tells about the reason why you did choose the participants or the respondents. Okay, I'll read example for you. I found an article about Mr. Dorsch and the Purdue exponent the day after Thick as Thieves was screened at Purdue. And since most screenplay writers live on either the west or east coast of the country, I was very excited to find one at Purdue. I chose to interview Mr. Dorsch. Here it is. This is the reason why. Because I am very interested in the field of screenwriting. And I think it is a very interesting career path because it blends creativity and professional writing. So that's the main reason. So you've got to have your main reason too for your presentation, okay? I hope you can prepare your presentation report very well, because I'm going to take the score from that. That's the first assignment. And this in this course for speaking for academics, that thing. So I hope you have a good preparation for that. And I think this is very clear, and we don't have to think a lot for telling our listeners about the reason why we choose the participants. And here we go to the next point, or the next structure for your presentation report or your writing report. I don't want. Uh, Here is goals for the interview. Goals for the interview. I think the name of this point is quite clear. Not quite clear, but I think this is very clear. So it's gonna be about your purpose of interview. So if you have mention this in the beginning of your presentation, then just skip this. Why did I have this kind of note below the point? Because here, let me go back to the previous slide. Here it is. Okay. And on the second point of the structure, we have nature of your report, right? And it contains also about aim of the interview and also aim of the report. If you had already mentioned the aim here, I mean, in this part, so you just need to skip that here, okay, on the fifth point. Because if you tell the listeners again for this, actually this is not a problem for repeating the goals, just to remind or just to let the listeners alert about the interview's goals. But if you do not want to have like unconcise writing, whether you not unconcise writing, I mean you repeat the same thing, that's actually your choice, okay? That's actually your choice. Whether you want to structure your presentation or your writing by having double aim like this, goals, or not. So it depends on you actually. Okay, so just follow the notes if you do not want to repeat. If you had mentioned this in the beginning of your presentation, then just skip this. This is the goals of the interview. But over here from the example, you may see the difference from the previous one in the nature of your report. In here, the goals of the interview, it takes more than two sentences, right? So it is a little bit longer than the first aim that we have in nature of your report, because in nature of your report in the previous slides, um, the explanation combines not only the aim but also the participants, right? The participants and also the aim of the report, and a little bit information about the details of the participants, right? Uh, so I think it depends on you once again. So you are free in your speaking. You are the one who knows well about uh, whether you want to repeat or not, whether you feel comfortable saying that or not, whether you I mean, not whether you, but if you think that you're going to feel nervous or feel anxious about this, just skip this, okay? Because you had already mentioned that before on the previous point. Okay, now we go to the sixth point that is about narrative of the interview. In this sixth point narrative of the interview, what you need to tell is to describe how the questions for the interview was given. I'm sorry, this is not was given, but this is mistyping were given. I think I don't need to explain more about what narrative of the interview actually about. It's actually about because it has been clear, right? So narrative of the interview is about describing how the questions of your interview were given to the participants. And here is the example on how you could report that. Let me read for you. For this interview, the questions were sent via email. I sent him 10 questions. So there were 10 questions for the interview. And do you know how many questions did you did you give to your participants? I hope you know the numbers. Okay, let us continue reading. I sent him 10 questions on Tuesday, November 4, and he sent a reply on November 6. Okay, this is because the focus of this interview, I mean, the writer's focus is on the screenwriting, right? It is different with our assignment, actually, students. So, our assignment is about speaking, right? Speaking. So, English learners or English teachers, how could they speak and learn English? And then you've got to inform or report the results of the interview to me. And how did you administer the questions? If you have, for example, like I forget the name of the students who had already sent me a link for a link for the interview that he had with his friend before on our group. Actually, the person gave me uh that person used like Zoom meeting or teleconference meeting, uh questioning the participants about English learning. So if you are doing the same thing, you may mention that clearly here in narrative of the interview. And let us just go to the second paragraph. At first, I was concerned that he might be too busy with his graduate study work for have time for my interview. Luckily, this was not the case. He answered my questions very promptly, and which was a relief. Since the interview was done through email, we did not have much interactions aside from a few emails that established contact and described the project. I was sure to send emails thanking him for his time after I received his answer. So I think the tone of this writing is quiet, relaxed, right? I mean, quite relaxed at how that the writer try to inform the readers that that he or she was relieved that the participants or the respondents uh, could could have special time in participants. I mean, in his or her his busy time with graduate study. And for you, my students, for your presentation, you can also say such these things, okay? So you are free actually composing your writing, composing your presentation. So you may say or you may tell or inform your listener really based on your words. So it should not follow the same words as the examples I show you, okay? But you may just take the idea of what I had already mentioned before and now. Okay, we got to the seventh point of a structure for your report interview. Impression of the interview. So this is about your impression of the interview, not the participants in not your participants' impressions of the interview, but your impressions of the interview. Here's the example. Let me read. My impression from this interview was very positive. Not only did he answer my questions in a timely manner, but his answers were also witty, insightful, and fun to read. He wrote in a very conversational tone, which made his answers easy to read and relatable. Email interviews can be difficult because the interviewer is unable to get a strong read on the person they are interviewing. Despite establishing contact with my respondent, I have never met him face to face or even heard his voice before. However, I do have a verbatim transcript of his answer to my questions, which is very helpful in another sense. In all in one, I was pleased with the outcome of the interview. So this is clearly the tone of the writing, or the writers wrote her or his impression of the interview very well. So the writer was very pleased with the outcome or the finding of the interview, and he tried to let the readers know his or her impression. So it is also works similarly for you, my students, for your interview. If you think that you feel satisfied with the interview that you had done with your partners, for example, with your participants, I mean, with your participants, you may mention that and why did you feel satisfied for that? And if you have another feeling for the results or the findings of your interview, you can also mention here, okay, in this structure, impressions of the interview. Okay, I think that's clear for number 7. Number 8. Number 8 is impact on your view of the interview's findings. So, impact of your view as an interviewer of the interview's findings. So, this is about the results of your interview. Here's the example. I do not screenshot all the writing for impact of this person interview because it takes more than one screenshot actually. So if you think that you need after this to write or prepare your presentation more than one page, that's also okay. This is only example. Let me read for you. Going into this interview, I was expecting Mr. Dorch to be an English graduate student, but he's actually a sports psychology. And I found it very interesting that someone with a social science background would be writing screenplays in their free time. And I think that this is very telling regarding the backgrounds of professional writers, and their degrees can be from a wide variety of fields and not limited to an English or communication departmental degree. As previously mentioned, this interview made me realize, so this is the view, okay, this is the view, made me realize, so this is the word realize, this is very clear that this writer is trying to let the readers know his view or her view about the results of the results of the interview. Okay, let me continue reading. The interview made me realize that writing skills can be translated into multiple different career fields, and Mr. Dorch writes using a different style for his graduate psychology classes than the screenplay format. Yet in both cases, his ability to write in a clear, concise manner culminates in a well-written document. It seems that the most important thing to learn when approaching this field is the idea of blah 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 blah. This is about a discourse. Well, if we refer back again to our assignment, what can you have in your presentation for this impact of your interview? Actually, you may do like this example, and you can also add, it would be better since our class is about speaking for academic setting. It would be better if you cite some references, okay? If you find your if you find your results of your interview, I mean results of your interview or interviews finding suitable or against a theory, for example, you may do citation in text citation. Do you know how to do citation? No? If you do not know, find out. Okay, find it out after this. Citation is just like a you quote for someone else, for from a reference, for example, or from a book, from an article, from an article journal. I mean, an article journal or magazines, a conference article, and other kind of references you may have to to support, actually, to support your findings. Okay, to support your findings, your interview's finding. So you may mention your view after you had already analyzed and did the interview. So it is all about your findings. Okay, it is all about the results of your interview. The results of your interview, please describe that here. And is it a must for having this in your report? I think yes, because this is very important. And how could not very, yeah, this is important. And actually this is not the most important thing, but uh you've got to know every point I mentioned before, started from number one, brief introduction, nature of your report, and then participants' background, and then your impressions of the interview, the results or the findings. They are all important, actually. They are all important for your report. But I think you need to compensate more times of speaking, more time of preparation to write about your findings. Okay, because everyone is curious about what did you find from the interview. So you've got to mention. Okay, you've got to let your listeners or your readers know. Okay, well, we go to the ninth point: information that is still needed. Well, after you had already described and let the readers or your listeners know about the findings of your interview, then it would be better if you also mention or tell your listeners or reader about what information that is still needed from that interview. And that's gonna be about your wish. Okay, your wish, what is left with your interview. And this is the example. So this is the example. I'm gonna read this for you. I wish that I had been able to get more information about a production company in the interview. Sini, sini. And the process of making the film. He was not very descriptive on either of those topics, even when I sent follow up questions specifying those answers. I found what I could online and in the exponent archives, but I think it would have been helpful to have a little bit more information. So this is an example that you may copy. You may samples. So you may see from the example that there is a wish over here, right, from the writers about the interview. Because here the word is, where is it? Here it is. He was not very descriptive. So because of the participants of this writer was not very descriptive on either those topics, then the writer mentioned that there is still need for information to be explored, right? And the writer also thinks it would have been helpful to have a little bit more information. So, the wish of this writer is to have more information. So, my students, I think this point is also good because of what if you are doing a real interview for a research, it helps the readers a lot to find to find an idea about what to do from what have been left in your interview or the results of your research. Okay. And I think this is the last, right? Yes, the last. Not the last, but the two last topics. Number 10. Number 10 is conclusion. Just like introduction to open your presentation or your writing, you've got to have like conclusion too for your presentation. So after you open that, then at the end you've got to close that with conclusion. And your conclusion will be about number one, is your interview project successful? You may mention that. So in overall, what happened to your project or your interview? You may mention that. And the second point that you may have in your conclusion is restating. This is the second way, actually, the second way to have conclusion. Restate what have you learned from the interview. What have you learned from the interview? So you may refer back to the findings, of course. And the third point is what lesson can you obtain and share with others. So this is almost like an idea for readers or listeners about the lesson from your interview that you had already done before, to them what they can learn from your interview, your findings, and it could be from the life information that you have in your interview. Okay, and then share with others. I think this is quite clear because you also have paragraph writing class. I think this is not a big problem for you, because if you are good at writing and then you're speaking, I still believe that if you're good in writing, you'll be good in speaking. Okay, because in the theory that I had ever studied, that there is a correlation between writing skill and also speaking skill. Okay, this is the example. Should I read this? Okay, let me read for you. Overall, I think the interview was very successful. So this is about the interview project, whether it is successful or not. I learned more about a career path that I'm interested in, and I was able to explore broader possibilities in the field of professional writing. And I found a great deal of commonalities between the field of professional writing, the art of screenplay writing, including rhetorical principles, connections to class reading and lectures. I hope my research enlightened my classmates on career path. So this is the lesson, right? I hope my research enlightened my classmate on career path that they had not considered before, in addition to providing them with more information about professional writing careers in general. So from the 3 points on the left, okay, you may see on the left side of your screen about the three sub points for conclusion that I mentioned before. This writer in the PDF has these 3 points, right? Uh, about the success of the interview, and also the writer had already restated the thing that she or he had learned from the interview, and the last is about the lesson that you can obtain, that the readers can obtain. Okay, finally, this is my last, the end for my slide, the end for my presentation, and the end for the structure of your presentation report or your writing report. So do not forget, for presentation, if you open in the very beginning of your presentation, like having greeting. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, like that. And of course, at the end of your presentation of your speaking, for example, of your speaking, especially not for writing, you've got to close that. It would be better you close that too by saying how to say that. It's very simple, right? So the closing could be varied. It depends on your creation and your speaking. You may say the common thing like, I think that's all. Okay? I think that's all about my presentation. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So that's the simplest thing that you can say. Or just say thank you. Thank you. I think that's all about my presentation. That's over. Okay? Or you give a rest. You give a rest to your presentation and then you say, I raised my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Okay? That's the way for closing your presentation or your speaking. Well, students, I have no more slides to say to you. As my promise to you last week, I'm gonna share this video, and also we'll share the PDF. Okay, the PDF, the example of an interview report for writing. You can learn that for your presentation too. Okay, and for an example of how to present report interview, I'll also put the link on Google Classroom in our class. A link of presentation for a report, for an interview report. Well, my students, I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me, listening to my explanation. Good luck, okay? Good luck with your assignment. Good luck with your project. I wish you can have a good presentation. Okay, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. That's all. Bye bye.